Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the combined meeting for November 1st, 2017, Vineland Board of Education. Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Don't let it happen again.
Okay. That is my name. My maiden name is Bueller, so yeah. So it fits. It fits.
Coincidence.
Okay. Are we doing roll call?
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Yes. Ms. Acosta.
Here.
Ms. Cottaspati.
Present.
Mr. Fiocchi.
Here.
Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Medio.
Here.
Ms. Rios.
Present.
Mr. Sobrana.
Present.
Mr. Boardley.
Present.
Mr. Jennings.
Present. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following, announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, S&J Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and the Administrative Office Bulletin Board. And we would like to ask Rossi Middle School to come up and help us, leading us with the flag salute.
Of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Stay up. Right there, please.
Mrs. Monahan, come on up, and we have certificates for each of you. Thank you for being here tonight, and we're going to take your picture, if you would please turn around. Why is it on?
Which part? I'm saying. I don't know. Wait a minute. How do I put it on? It's just okay.
All right. Okay, yeah, that's all right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Nice job.
Do we have a resolution for executive session?
We do not have one for tonight.
Thank goodness. Dr. Griccio?
Okay, we have several presentations this evening. First, I'm very excited to introduce Mr. Stephen Kalakos and Miss Ivelisse Flores, and if Mrs. Lauren DeBello is in the room, would the three of you please come forward? As many of you hopefully got to see this evening, we had our AMSA students out in the hallway sharing the apps that they developed as one of their projects. They did an absolutely phenomenal job, so I want to congratulate and thank each of you. You really made us very proud, and I want to thank your parents as well, because they deserve some congratulations too. So congratulations to all of you. And we're going to ask you if you'd please come up and introduce these lovely people and tell us a little bit about the project, and we have a certificate for each of them.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Clacos, and this is Evelise Flores. And we are the 8th grade STEM teachers in the Applied Math and Science Academy at Veterans Memorial School. And throughout this marking period, our 8th grade students have been working very hard on an exciting challenge that we've given them. And so there's something in the United States called the Congressional App Challenge. And so with this challenge, our students, or students throughout the country in middle schools and high schools, they create apps for smart devices. So whether you have an iPhone or an Android or an iPad or some kind of device, these students throughout the country develop these apps. And so what we've done is offered this app challenge to our students. And what's great about this is that the entire challenge for this marking period really derived authentically from an idea that both Mrs. Flores and I had, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that now.
I'm shorter than Mr. Kalakos. All right, so you might be wondering, how did this project start? So we told our students that we were going to get a check for $1.5 million, and then they got really excited. And then we had to tell them that it was a fake check, and they weren't as excited about that. And then we told them, well, you have to use that money towards the city. And then they were like, oh, how do we do that? So they spent time researching the different departments in our city, and they came up with a few departments that they said, you know what, we can improve this department by creating this app for them. And that's how it all started. So it kind of unraveled from there, and we were able to have representatives from different departments come in and see them present their ideas and critique their apps and say, that's going to work for our department, that might not work, change it. So they did, and then the apps that they presented outside today to you are their final products. And Mr. Kalakos will continue.
Okay. So just about a couple weeks ago, we had city officials and department heads come to Veterans Memorial School in an official setting. And so our students had prepared presentations with their prototypes, and they were given feedback and constructive criticism based on the prototypes that they developed. Emma Lopez from the health department specifically was very, very interested in our health department apps and wished she had the funding to develop our apps. So what we're noticing is that there's a lot of interest in our city and in our youth in developing these apps, and we're hoping that with the app challenge that we'll have some finalists here in the country, and hoping that somehow we would be able to get funding to develop these apps. We've learned that it's not cheap to develop apps, but well worth the interest. So if you know any investors, please give them our email. But we're very proud of them, and we're keeping our fingers crossed. And they did a great job presenting their apps today, and we'll see what happens. And we thank you for inviting us here today.
I also want to thank Mrs. DeBello, who's the supervisor, and she's been part of this project, so thank you for your part. And we got the information from our congressman, Mr. Lobiondo, Frank Lobiondo, and it was shared with our schools, and we're very excited that you took advantage of it. You never know, we just might win the money. So anyhow, congratulations to all of you. We're so proud of you. And if you would be so kind to call the names, each of our board members has a pile based on the app. So we have a certificate for each student that did that particular app.
Great.
So if you want to do it that way, it would be great. Thank you.
And while we're situating that, I know board members were out looking at the apps, and I was out there. All of them were really, really well done, well thought out, and I would probably use every single one of them at one point or another. Especially that one for the traffic lights and the potholes, man. Sorry,
Still
Anthony.
trying to learn how to use his iPhone, but we won't have Anyhow, when you called up, would you please stay in the front so we can get a nice group picture when we're done?
All right. For the Vineland Police Department app, we have Gabe Castro, Preston Corporal, and Brielle Davis.
The board members can hand them out for you if you like, if you want to just call the names off of that tag, and then we can get a picture. Well, if you know, okay.
All right, for the Health Department app, we have Eating Green, that's the name of their app, and we have Leo Witzel, Nishi Gupta, and Hannah Tamagni.
I don't know the order.
Okay. All right. For the Vineland Recycling and Solid Waste, Vineland Embellish a Bin app, we have John Zhang and Andrew Mastro. For the Vineland City app, a fan favorite, we have Roderick Zapanta and Amel Benson. And our health department app, Inspira Instant, we have Connor Malloy and Jose Gabriel Castro. And another health department app, Healthcare Near Me, Aaliyah Ayala and Ruth Alahi. Our Public Works app, Fix and Go, Mr. Jennings' favorite, Talia Alicea, Iram Kayas, and EJ Rada. All right, and we have two more apps to present. For the emergency medical services, the Vineland EMS app, we have Isabella Amberths, Michael Dean, Parmisha Patel, Brianna Brown, and Mackenzie Nash. And finally, the economic development app called Economics. Jenna Carlson, Joseph Dorzen, Savannah Acolia, Lajora King, Josh Goldsboro, Ezra Bradley, and Anaya Troy. We actually have one more app. They're yelling at me from the back, I'm sorry. Your app was for the education department called VMS Extra. For Veterans Memorial School extracurricular activities, so parents know what their children are doing at all times. We have Cole Keller, Jasleen Jaswal, and Natalia Acosta. Natalia Acosta.
Congratulations again. Very nice job. Thank you to our parents also for taking the time to bring your students out tonight. Thank you.
And just to clarify, they were all my favorite. All of them. Just that helps my road rage, the other one. Veterans, any veterans going to leave the building?
No, they're here.
No. My vice president told me to ask. I do what he says. I would say yeah.
Okay, we'll do that and then I'll introduce the veteran. At this time, I'd like to call up Mrs. Kristen Speakman, and we are going to be recognizing one of the teachers at many schools for being the 2018 VEA Educational Support Professional of the Year.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Kristen Speakman. I'm the assistant principal at Dr. Benny's school. We are here, I'm actually here on behalf of VEA tonight, and of course our school, to recognize Darlene Castellini, who her official title at Benny's is Senior Clerk Typist. She works in our main office. But as we all know who work in schools, that our support staff is really the backbone of our school. They may not be in the direct line teaching students, but without them, our schools would not function. Our students rely on them. Our parents rely on our support staff. And at Benny's, we affectionately refer to Darlene as the real boss of Benny's. And everyone thinks it's a joke, but those of you who've worked in an office at a school know how much we rely on our main office staff. Darlene is the guru of Genesis. Our staff members rely on her if they, need help with ASOP, Genesis, all the things that we do in the school. And our parents certainly know Darlene because, we take care of your kids like they're our own. And, the kids come to us and our staff when they need lunch money or they forgot their student ID or anything. It's almost like a second mom. So Darlene has been a VEA member for 20 years, but she actually began at Benny's in 1993 when I was a teacher, a little bit after that, as a playground and cafeteria aide. So Darlene, please come up so we can recognize you. She was nominated by her peers and VEA as the Educational Support Professional of the Year to represent VEA. And it's a well-deserved honor to represent our support staff. Congratulations. Absolutely. You hold your flowers.
Congratulations, Darlene. Very nice. At this time, we're going to recognize some very special and important people. As you know, we're going to be celebrating Veterans Day, and so we invited any veterans from our district to come here tonight so that we could say thank you and recognize you. And it gives me great pleasure. I'm going to read the list, and if you happen to be in the audience, we would really appreciate it if you would please come up front, and then we'll be taking a picture. We thank you so much for the service you've given to our country, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate what you do. So God bless each of you. I'm going to call one name at a time. Please come forward. First is Florence Spivak, Petway School Nurse. Joseph Badiali, Maintenance. Howard Somerville, Maintenance. Richard Marino, Reber Tech Department. Mary Lodehold, Rossi Aid. Guess nobody wanted to come out. Stephen Grakowski, a Rossi teacher. Jeff Perez, VHS teacher. Christopher Chiola, VHS teacher. Joseph Camardo, our Barcy School principal. Okay. Marquis Strickland from Sabatier. Yay! Go up and give him that?
No.
Thank you so much. I was starting to really worry. Rosemary Davis from Food Service. Nina Mercado, Food Service. Christopher Jennings, our board president. Robert DeSanto, our board solicitor. Catherine Revelle, Duran teacher. And Dennis McGee, our Duran security guard. For those of you who are here, we are very thankful that you took the time to come, and it's just a small token from us to tell you how much we appreciate what you did, and that we really are very grateful to have you in our school district. Thank you all very much. Okay, next we have another guest with us, Mr. Michael Garcia from our auditing firm, Ford Scott & Associates, and he is going to present our audit report this evening. We are just receiving our backup material this evening since he is here, so he's going to explain the audit results to you, and then it will be on our December meeting for approval.
Thank you. Scott is handing out copies of the audit synopsis, and my presentation tonight will refer to the synopsis. So once he hands that out, we can get into the numbers. But I guess before we get into the numbers, as I remind everyone every year, the audit is really two phases. There's the financial statements and looking at and confirming and verifying the numbers, but then there's also the part of determining whether or not you're following the rules and regulations that the state and the federal government impose on all school districts. Each and every year those requirements become more and more, there are more and more of those requirements each year, and it makes it more difficult each year for your business office to keep on top of all the new requirements. As part of the audit process, we spend a lot of time confirming your cash balances, making sure that cash is where it belongs and that it's in the bank accounts as it should be. We determine that your revenues are being deposited and posted correctly, that your tuition that you receive from other districts is properly calculated. Payroll. Obviously, your largest expense are salaries and wages, so we make sure on a test basis that you're paying your employees in accordance with their collective bargaining agreements. Other expenditures that you make, we review to make sure that those disbursements are supported by invoices and receipts and that the correct amounts are being paid to vendors. When those vendors exceed the bid threshold, which is $40,000 for your district. We determine that you're following the local public, or the school public contracts law, and going out for bid when required on those areas. As a recipient of federal and state grants, we're required, you as a district are required to maintain detailed books and records on the grant activity, and we have additional audit procedures that we apply specifically to those grants. Just to touch on a few of the things that we look at in the audit process. When we find errors of exception or problems, we are required to report to the Board of Ed a finding and recommendation that would require a corrective action plan to correct that area of error. I'm happy to report that this year's audit is clean with no findings, no recommendations. So in the items that we sampled, we didn't come across any issues that require corrective action. So that is obviously something that your business office strives for, and that's a big achievement to have a clean audit. This is a couple years in a row now that the audit has been clean with no finding and recommendation, so that's obviously a great thing. So that's really the phase one that I talked about.
Should we clap right there? Should we?
You can, you can. So as far as when it comes to following the rules and the regulations that the state and the federal government impose on school districts, you're doing fine. Now we can talk about the numbers a little bit. And if you would go to the audit synopsis that was just handed out, and the first page behind the cover, that's really where I want to focus on for tonight's discussion of the finances. This is your balance sheet. So your assets, your liabilities, and your fund balance, what you were left at the end of the year. And just as a reminder, this is for the 16-17 school year, so it was the year that ended June 30th, 2017. And I want to highlight and focus on the first column, which is the general fund. It's your main operating fund. So you see on this balance sheet the assets of the general fund. You'll see the total assets are $8,854,699. That's predominantly made up of cash of $2.6 million, inter funds of $4.7 million, and all that means is an inter fund means there's another fund in the district where that money is due from. So it's an internal account receivable. You also have state aid receivable in the amount of $1,047,000, and then other accounts receivable, $441,000. That totals your total assets of the $8,854,000. On the liability side, we have two liabilities reported here. First, accounts payable of $744,421, and unearned revenue of $94,000 for total liabilities of $838,000. You take the assets minus the liabilities, the resulting number is your fund balance number. And that fund balance is broken down into several components that you'll see below. The total fund balance that we have here, you will see, is $8,015,952.98. Do we all see that number? I want to discuss that number a little bit because it requires some detail and then also some additional explanation. The first piece of that you'll see is $400,000 in maintenance reserve. That maintenance reserve is set aside and can only be used for maintenance of your school facilities. So it can't be used for general operating expenses. It's pledged and only allowed to be spent on maintenance. Next, we have the reserve for excess surplus in the amount of $7,420,820.90. As a reminder to everyone, the state of New Jersey imposes a 2% fund balance cap on school districts. Whatever funds you have in excess of the 2% is required to be set aside as excess surplus that goes to tax relief to balance the next budget, which in this case, the 7.4 is in the bank and available for your 18-19 budget. So you have $7.4 million of surplus to apply to that next budget. Keep that number in mind because the next number is very important also. The reserve for excess surplus that's designated for subsequent years' expenditures, the $8,737,955, this is the amount that you were above the 2% last year, being June 30th of 2016. That money is still in the bank at June 30th, 2017, but it's pledged to fund the 17-18 school budget. So that money is now effectively spent on the 17-18 school year. When we compare the $8.7 million to the $7.4 million, it's a difference of about $1.3 million. So you're $1.3 million behind in surplus this year that you have available to apply to the next budget. So that makes your next budget very difficult, that you're $1.3 million behind. You still have a strong excess surplus, but not as strong as it was in the prior year. So you're short that $1.3 million to your budget gap. Additionally, as you're all aware, the state reduced your state aid for this year just over $2 million. So that's on top of the 1.3 that you're short. Now, I am aware that the state has offered a 10-year loan on that $2 million shortfall that the board can basically, so that you don't have to absorb the full $2 million in 1 year, you can pay it back over 10 years, which I assume, and it's interest-free. So I assume that's probably, Helen, have you made a decision yet that you're going to accept that offer?
We're actually still doing some research. We're a little bit upset because there were only 3 districts out of the 27 that applied that were offered a loan instead of reinstatement. And so Millville and us and East Orange are the ones that were offered a loan. So we plan on writing a complaint letter basically with Millville, just saying we would like to be reinstated like the other districts.
Yeah. And it's probably important that the board know everything that Helen had to go through in the entire business office to get the application that the state required to review and request the reinstatement of this of the state aid that was cut was so voluminous and detailed, and to be quite honest with you, just ridiculous amounts of paperwork that had to be pulled together. I know they only give you a few days. Was it a week, 10 days? And the process that the district had to go through to request reinstatement, it was not easy putting that paperwork together. And then, of course, you do all that work, and they deny the reinstatement. They offer you a loan. I mean, a loan is better than nothing, of course, but you're paying it back. So they're not giving you any of that $2 million back. They're allowing you to spread the loss over 10 years. And so there were only, I knew there were some districts did have it reinstated, so there were only 3 that didn't get anything back, and you were one of them.
There were 27 that applied. 1 was denied because their application had flaws in it. 3 were issued loans, and the other 23 had the money reinstated. Now,
all of the money or a portion? Not all.
Whatever they applied for, yeah. But, I mean, should I say more about this? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm interested.
What we were told, though, is the reason why some were offered loans instead is because those 3 districts were not paying their fair share in taxes, which that number for us is astronomical. I don't even know how long it would take us to get there, because that's probably around 56 to 60 million, and our local tax levy is 23. So it's somewhat impossible to get to that level. Even with increasing every year, like we have been increasing at 2%. The other thing is they were looking at people's reserves and surplus. So where we're trying to put money aside in a reserve, I guess it goes against us. And the surplus also, that helps us to do our budget each year. I guess they say, well, you have reserve, you don't need this money. I mean, I'm sorry, excess surplus, you don't need the money. So they're looking at that as well, from what we've been told.
Yeah, and puts you in a position, you have $400,000 for maintenance. That's one of your reserves. Obviously, with the number of facilities that you have, $400,000, is not a significant amount to have set aside. You've got excess surplus of $7.4 million, which initially seems like a lot until we realize that it's 1.3 less than we had a year ago. So they're throwing numbers at you that they're correct. They're saying you've got maintenance reserve, you've got excess surplus, but they're not really putting it in the proper context to gauge what the real impact is, and that's probably somewhat intentional, on their part. When you say you're not at your fair share tax levy, 2 of the districts that you mentioned that didn't get reinstated were former Abbotts. What was the third? Who was the third? Okay, of former Abbott also. So, unfortunately, this is probably the state's way of it's backdoor tax increase is really is what it's going to come down to. Now remember, when you raise you can only raise 2% a year. That only generates about $400,000 for you. So you can't even raise, and if you were of the mind to say let's raise the taxes to get there, 2% only gets you $400,000 roughly.
Right, unless you go into, unless you go into banked cap.
Yeah, and you did raise 2% last year, and so you didn't have any banked last year, but previous years you may have.
Oh, we had banked cap each year, but we only did approve 2% each of those years, for 3 years so far.
So, those are the points that I wanted to make. The things that the business office is doing, you're running the office correctly, you're running the office properly. We don't have findings and recommendations, but you do have these financial dilemmas that, when the state cuts your state aid $2 million, and you're already 1.3 behind in your excess surplus. You're looking, 3.7, and that's before you add any of what your contractual increases are in your next budget. You're down $3.7 million. So, I hate to tell you, to come and say that it's good news that there's no findings and recommendations, but you have a lot of tough work in the next budget in front of you, and I'm sure you all realize that already. I did want to point out those items to you, and those were the areas that I did want to discuss. If anyone has any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Hearing none, thank you all, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Deserves a clap. Although we're in the same boat every year.
I just would like to take a moment to thank Helen and Scott and your whole department for the job that you did. This is our 3rd year in a row with no audit findings, so it's really remarkable. So thank you. Okay, next I'd like to call forward Mrs. Dina Rodolfo, and she is going to be giving you an update on our test scores with a test presentation.
Hi everybody, my name is Dina Rodolfo. I am the Supervisor of Guidance and Testing, and I'm just going to be presenting the data that we've got for our state testing. So I'm going to begin with, obviously the purpose is to basically review our district assessment scores and our SGPs. Our SGPs are student growth percentiles, and they were just recently posted, and we were able to get them in for you. We're going to go over our math scores, our language arts scores, our science scores, and also review our current state assessment graduation requirements and the upcoming changes, because there are some major changes coming with that, and then also address our next steps. I'm also going to say this presentation is very long. It's about 70 slides. I'm not going to go over every slide. I'm going to go over just basically a couple specific grades and a couple specific slides, and go over the SGPs and explain to you what the data means, and then you'll each have access to this presentation, so because it will be here till next week, going over everything that's in here. So basically, when you're looking at a slide that looks like this, this is basically our 3rd grade language arts scores. And as you can see, each slide has a line bar on it, basically addressing our district, park, and state averages. And as you can see, many of our schools did quite well. When you get to a slide that has the third grade language arts comparison year to year, so essentially basically what this slide is looking at a specific grade level, like third grade in a specific school, and looking how that grade level did every year. What this doesn't take in mind is that those students are different students each year. So it's not the same students each year. So it's not the best representation of what that is, but there is a slide that does address that. So, and as you can see from this slide, if you look at our district scores, we certainly went up, whereas Park kind of leveled out, the Park states. And again, there's one for language arts and there's one for math for every grade level. And it has all the state averages. And this is again the year-to-year comparison. And this would be our fourth grade language arts comparison year to year. And as you can see from looking at this slide, whereas Park states leveled out, we rose quite a bit. This is the slide that addresses our, when you see a third to fourth or fourth to fifth, when you come across one of those slides, basically what those slides are looking at is the same students, what they did in third grade, and then when they went on to fourth grade, how they did in fourth grade for a specific school. So when you look at this slide, you can see as a district, we rose quite a bit.
So this is a more precise
Correct.
determination of.
I would say the third to fourth grader, when you're looking at a fourth to fifth or third to fourth, that is a specific grade level that moved on to fourth grade and how they did in fourth grade.
And those specific students.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, there's some movement, I mean, it may not be the exact students because students move in and out, but it is that school, those students that went from one grade to the next. And again, this is our fourth grade math scores. And this is our third to fourth grade, again, the mathematics comparisons. So essentially what you're looking at, and if you can see, the state went down, the Park went down, the Park states went down, but as a district, for our third to fourth grade comparison, we rose. And some schools actually, like Petway and Winslow, very high. Now this is what we just put in for everybody. So basically, student growth percentiles are, in my opinion, they're kind of a better way to look at the scores. A student growth percentile basically looks at how students tested one year in comparison to the next year, and they're kind of grouped according to their academic peers. So essentially, if you have a student who scored, let's say, a 725, so in one year, they're kind of grouped with their peers, and then they look at those students the next year to see how they performed. And basically, they're given a percentage. So basically, if you look at Johnstone, that 68 means those students in that academic peer group at Johnstone scored 68% better than their academic peers. So the typical growth that we would expect, or that is between 35 and 65%. And as you can see, we had some schools did extremely well, and the majority of our schools scored within the typical growth. These are our fourth. I also put science in here, so we have some science. And these are our fifth grade language arts. Our fifth grade, again, the year-to-year comparison, which essentially looks at, again, this, different groups of students, but that specific grade level. And again, here's your fourth to fifth grade comparison, essentially looking at that fourth grade group and then how they did when they went on to fifth grade. And as you can see, as a district, we rose. I'm not going to discuss every slide. Like I said, there's 70 of them. And here is, again, our fourth to fifth grade mathematics comparison, whereas we rose, although the Park states went down. So we did still manage to get some growth.
Bless you.
And this is something that we were just finally able to do this year. This is the third year. Last year was the third year that we had Park. So basically what this slide looks at is looking at that cohort, that third grade cohort from 2015, and looking at how they did all the way through elementary school. So we looked at their third grade score, we looked at their fourth grade score, and we looked at their fifth grade score. And this is essentially how they did. And as you can see, as the Park States kind of went down, we had the upward trend. So that was like the cohort. And again, this is our fifth grade growth percentiles. So this we were looking at the other day. Johnstone, the majority of our schools, we had some schools like Johnstone, Durand, Winslow, DePalito scored well above the 50th percentile, which is great growth. And that's basically looking at those students, like I said, in that academic peer group and seeing how much growth they made from the previous year. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that growth. I mean, the scores are important, but we were more worried about that growth. And again, this is the that cohort, that third through fifth grade language arts comparison cohort, where you're looking at students from third grade to see how they did all the way through fifth grade in language arts. This is our sixth grade language arts, the year to year, mathematics, and here's our student growth percentiles. So again, the typical growth is in that box that I have there, so that is your typical growth. So the students with respect to math are all making that typical growth. They're all making growth. And this is the mathematics year to year. Again, this is just looking at a specific grade level. And again, this slide here looks at, like we were talking about earlier, that 6th to 7th grade comparison, how they did in 6th grade and the same group of students when they moved on to 7th grade. So you can see that we did make some growth. And again, this is the mathematics, the 6th to 7th grade mathematics. And here is our student growth percentiles. This is what we really look at as far as the growth that our students are making. So essentially all, our students are falling within that typical growth range, making sure that they're making some growth. And they are falling within that range. Sure, absolutely. In that black box is typical growth. That's the growth that we are looking for in that typical growth. So if you are between 35 and 65% is typical growth. That's the growth that we're looking for. The state is looking for. Yep. 50% is obviously that's average, so they're giving you a little leeway on each side, but between 35 and 65 is considered typical growth. Anything below is obviously low growth, and anything above is obviously high growth.
And that's mathematics.
This one here, did I not put it? Yes, it's mathematics.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Language and math, okay. Oh, okay, I see it.
Correct. Correct. So, and that's actually not going to, one is math and one is language arts. And that's all this year. So I didn't put last year. So that is, one is ELA and one is math. So what's going to happen with this, and that's kind of the jumping ahead, like the next two where we go to from here. So what happens with this data is now that these student growth percentiles are out, these are going to be these are going to be discussed with the principals, coming up with ideas and plans, and I'm sure Dr. Gruccio and the curriculum people are going to be working with these schools to figure out how to better to bring that up and to see how we can improve that area.
We have the resources to improve that? I mean, I know the teachers look at professional development and they'll help the students, but do we have enough resources to provide these students the help needed to get to at least the state level?
Right. What they do is they're going to be looking at those students and how they scored and what the areas that they struggled, and they're going to take apart, look at the data, look at the analysis of their scores to see what was happening. And then they'll also look at other schools who maybe did well to see what's working in one school in comparison to what's maybe not working in another, and go at it from that perspective. So it will be addressed to to address those schools in those areas.
Deanna, this is a lot of information there.
It
Is there any
is.
way we could get to see that, that presentation and maybe review it?
Yeah, it's gonna be posted. Yeah, it's gonna be posted, so everybody will have access to it, and then you'll be able to take your time and look at it, because like I said, I'll be here till next week if I went over every slide and all the data and everything, because it's a lot. It's a lot of information. These are our 8th grade language arts scores. Here's our 8th grade, again, year to year, same grade level. And this is our 7th to 8th grade language arts comparisons, where we did make growth. And as you can see, some schools made absolute growth. So here's our 8th grade math, 8th grade mathematics comparisons, and 7th to 8th grade mathematics comparisons. So where they were in 7th grade as to where they are in 8th grade. And this is that 6th to 8th grade language arts cohort, meaning looking at that same group of students and where they started at 6th grade and how they scored, and then in 2015, and then looking at where they are in 2017. And so this is basically how they scored. And as a district, we did make growth. And the mathematics, this is where we were. This is that 6th to 8th grade cohort. And this is that ever popular SGPs. So this is the student growth percentiles. So again, your typical growth is in that box. And majority of our schools made that box. And some, like I said, the 70th percentile means that, those students at Landis scored 70% above their academic peers with the growth that they made. So these students are absolutely making growth. And that's why this is more important to me than the scores, because this shows the growth that the schools are making. These are our science scores. 9th through 11th grade, I put all on one slide. These are our 9th grade ELA scores, 10th grade ELA scores, and 11th grade ELA scores. And this is the student growth percentiles for ELA. And again, making growth. This is our 9th grade year-to-year comparison. Again, same students over the 3-year span. This is the 8th to 9th grade comparison, 10th grade comparison, and this is the 9th to 10th grade language arts comparison. 11th grade language arts.
So the VHS is included with the state, correct? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, the state is everybody in the state, yes. And just like we're also included in PARC, like, because we are part of PARC. There's 10 states that are part of PARC, 7 fully, I believe, and the other 3 are kind of parts of it.
Sir, there will be a question and answer
sorry.
time later.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, sorry.
I couldn't resist.
Okay, so this is our 10th to 11th grade language arts comparison, and this is our 9th through 11th grade cohort, meaning following those 9th graders from 2015 all the way through to last year. Here's our Algebra 1 scores. Algebra 1 year to year. Geometry. Geometry year to year. Our Algebra 2. And there's no student growth percentiles for these. That's why you're not seeing any. So Algebra 2 growth year to year. And this is kind of what I wanted to kind of end on is when PARC was created, when we implemented PARC 3 years ago, it was there was going to be a gradual change with respect to graduation requirements regarding testing. So up until our juniors and seniors of this year have the opportunity to meet their graduation requirements in many different ways. They can pass any of the PARC, 9, 10, or 11, Algebra 1, plus there's tons of other ways that they can meet their graduation requirements. For our current sophomores, it's different. So our current sophomores essentially have to take every park that they have to take, so 9th, 10th, or 11th, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, they have to sit for it all, okay? But they can also still use these options. So, but the only way that they can use these options is if they sit for every park. So they can't miss a year or choose not to take the test, or then they won't meet their graduation requirements. They have to sit. And the same thing for their portfolio appeals. The big change is going to be for our current freshmen. Our current freshmen, the way it stands right now, if the state does not make any changes to the graduation requirements, which they may, is they have to take and pass ELA 10, they have to take and pass Algebra 1. That is the first way that they can meet the graduation requirements. There is no other test that they can take. The only other way that they can meet their graduation requirements is if they sit for all those tests, all 3 parks for ELA, all 3 parks for Algebra 1, pass or fail, then they can do a portfolio, which is essentially questions that are done, and we have to submit them to the state, and they get graded by the teacher, and the guidance department sends them off to the state. The issue with that, this is a pathway report that I submit to the state. So basically, this year, we had 164 students that graduated through PARC. So they passed, but they met it through PARC requirements. We had 46 that used multiple requirements, and we have, meaning they took like the PSATs or the SATs and passed it that way. That will not be available anymore. So they're going to have to, those students are going to have to pass something else or do the portfolio. And the same thing with this other one here, where the students graduated through multiple pathways, meaning they could have done a portfolio and they could have passed a PSAT. So these 218 students are also going to have to meet the graduation requirement another way as well. So that's what's upcoming, is figuring out how, getting these kids to, sit for their tests, take the PARC, either pass it or do the portfolio. And that's what we're looking at. So a lot of portfolios coming for the freshman class if it doesn't change, if they don't pass. And that's it. Any questions? And I'll make this available to everybody so that you guys can really look at it and look at the data.
I have a question. With respect to the high school students, do we have approximately, do we know what percentage of the students are not taking the PARC?
Good question.
Yes, we do. I don't have it with me right now, but I can get you that information. We do have that information.
Do you have an idea?
Like just an approximation?
It depends on the subject. I had put this together and we had gone over it, and we had met with the high school over the summer. Me and Mr. Fry went and we met with administration and the department head over there, and we went over the numbers. So it depends on the subject area. It depends on...
Well, at least with respect to, obviously, math and
Yes.
whatever they need to graduate.
Yes. They need it all to graduate. I mean, they need it all to graduate. They, especially our freshmen that are in there now, they're gonna, if things don't change, they're gonna have to pass.
I mean, yeah, my concern is if they can't pass Algebra 1, they're in big trouble.
Right, right. So we do have that information, and I can get that to everybody that needs it, because we do have kids that are not taking it. So.
Are we delivering this information at freshman seminar, letting them know?
I met with the department head over at the 910 building before school started, and it was he added the same information, those slides that I had put in here regarding what the graduation requirements are, he added to their freshman assembly, so they are all aware. And I met with them in September, their first meeting, and they were also told whenever you meet with any of your freshmen, you need to go over, and your sophomores, because the sophomores still have to sit as well. They just have other options, but they still have to sit for all their tests. They can't just not opt out or however they think they can. They have to sit where there's no option for them right now, the way it stands. So they have to sit.
Are the parents also...
Yes, we are. We had spoke with Mr. Like I said, administration, and he is in the going to be sending something home before park season rolls. I call it park season, but before the time rolls around, he's going to make sure that he sends the call outs We've been using the email system quite a bit, call-outs, email system, and sending flyers out, just letting them know that this is what the situation is. They have to sit, they have to take it.
One last question. I'm
Sure.
sorry. With respect to those that are not taking it, is it because they're electing, or they just conveniently are absent that day, or
It's a combination of reasons. It really is, and some of it has to do with some of our juniors or seniors. If they're in a tested subject area and they met their graduation requirements, some of them just aren't going, and that's just something that we've addressed. So, and we're working on putting some plans in place to rectify that this year, which is why we met with administration and stuff. So, we're working on it.
yeah, maybe we need to pass a new policy requiring it.
Well, it is a requirement.
They passed
It is
based on another test that was
Right.
criteria, so
Right.
they already did what
So
they
they-
had to do. But that's going to be changing, and they'll have to take it at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any projections from the state level that any of this is going to change?
Haven't heard anything, not as of yet.
So safe to assume no.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
I mean, I know parents that don't want their kids to take the test.
I
That's
know.
just plain and simple.
I know.
What do we do if kids transfer into the high school from another area that didn't require that, and let's say they're going into 11th or their senior year?
The only way that it would be not required would be if they came from out of state, if they were in state. So if they come from out of state, it's a totally different thing. They would just take whatever they're in at that point, and that would count towards their graduation.
Yes, because we will be having many kids come
We've had an influx.
from Puerto Rico and
We've
everything
already
with this
received
whole hurricane.
27 at this point.
It's up to
And we're
34.
expecting- okay.
34, we got like 6 more.
All right, and we're expecting more around Thanksgiving, so.
Yeah, we got quite a few.
Right.
Their process is completely different. than
Yes,
here.
yes, it is. So, and again, those, it'll be addressed, and their criteria will be different.
Okay, I thank you very much for your time. We'll make sure that the board receives this PowerPoint. Dina will send it out tomorrow.
And if we could get that
Our next, I'm sorry.
information for the kids that don't or opt out, right, Inez? We'd like to see that.
There is no opt-out.
I mean,
They
that-
choose not to.
Well, that's-
The state, there is no opt-out.
Right. So in other words, yeah, if we can just get a percentage of, maybe we need to
Those
develop
kids.
a plan to convince these kids that they must take the park.
oops.
Okay, our student liaison was unable to make it this evening, so we can move on from our presentations.
Is there anyone with any questions concerning the HIB report? Anyone? Questions, HIB? Seeing none. Approval of minutes, October 4th work session, October 11th regular session. Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes. Any report?
None.
None, thank you. Public comment on agenda items tonight, Ms. Haley?
I did not receive any yellow sheets, but I don't know if there's anyone in the audience that wanted to speak.
Anyone that wants to speak tonight on agenda items? Seeing none, thank you. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Dr. Gruccio?
Okay, I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the following: retirements, resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, employment, transfers, student substitutes, extracurricular activities, extracurricular summer late edition, and volunteers.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Hmm.
Ms. Rios?
I said yes.
Sorry. Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of trips, district travel, and the winter athletic schedule.
Questions, comments, anyone? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval to authorize the board secretary to submit the New Jersey QSTAC Statement of Assurance.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval to authorize the board secretary to enter into an affiliation agreement with Solace University for the 17-18 school year for the placements of students for field internship, student teaching, practicum, and observations.
Question, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the revised fee schedule for use of school facilities, which will go along with policy 7510.
Questions, comments, anyone?
I have a question. Is this gonna be mentioned in committee reports?
It's the paragraph that we added.
Right.
Is it in the committee report, do you know?
I believe it is. Trying to pull it up.
The discussion was in the facilities, but then it went to policy. So.
Right.
Right.
Do you want elaboration as to why this came about?
Because anytime we discuss something in committees, we do present the committee report in public, so the public's aware as to what changes were made. So it would be nice for the public to know that a change was made, in case they're interested in using any of our facilities, or they know that the one-time use is not gonna be, it's gonna be free of charge, depending on the circumstances.
The actual paragraph wasn't there, but it was discussed in there. It just said that it would be added. The language, actual language was revised, sent off to Mr. DeSanto to revise and make sure it was appropriate.
Can we mention it then, prior to the vote, so that way the public's aware as to the change?
As I understood it, I was provided a paragraph that it was discussed by both the facilities and the policy committee. I looked at it and I thought that it needed to be tweaked a little bit in order to make it clear. And basically it was to accommodate activities that were sort of endorsed by the Recreation Commission that only were going to be involved one time. As opposed to so many of our activities which are repetitive. So this one-time free use of a facility had to be placed in our fee schedule. And what I try to do is make it very clear that one time means one time. It's not one time per school, one time per facility, but actually one and one time only. And it has to do with a collaboration with the Recreation Commission and an accommodation to allow these kids to use the facility.
And it's only for nonprofit organizations?
Only for nonprofit, yes.
Thank you.
This started with recommendation by Mr. Robbins in collaboration with the Superintendent of Recreation, Dale Elbuff.
That's a good idea.
Through a shared services agreement, they asked for this, and they are extremely cooperative with our needs as well. So
that's good.
That's why this was entertained.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I just want the public to know if
Thank you.
they're allowed to use a facility one time for nonprofit organizations, and it's not being mentioned through committee in detail, it's better for the community to know what's going on.
Well, what had happened, once they contact Mrs. Haley's office, or actually Mill, this fee schedule explains. You have to go through Dale Elbow, you have to go through recreation, and the whole procedure is in the fee schedule.
It may be mentioned later on through one of the committee reports, I'm not sure, but at least it's been explained.
But it is a good
Okay.
idea, so whoever thought
Yeah,
of
but,
it.
policy and personnel, and I know facilities met, but we just met October 4th, so we were going to do the presentation, but since this is a combined meeting.
Good question. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we had our motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the second reading for the following bylaws, policies, regulations for adoption. The first two listed are mandated changes, Policy 2700, Services to Non-Public School Students, and 7100, Long-Range Facilities Plan Revised. The next ones are recommended changes, which is Policy and Regulation 7101, Educational Adequacy of Capital Projects, and 7102, Site Selection and Acquisition. Policy 7130, School Closing, new. That pertains to closing down of a building. Policy 7300, Disposition of Property. Regulation 7300.2, Disposition of Land. 7300.3, Disposition of Personal Property, and 7300.4, Disposition of Federal Property.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the declaration of easement and resolution for temporary and permanent sewer utility easement for the relocation of the existing sewer transmission sanitary force main line at Coney and Landis Avenues.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios? Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of budgetary transfers for the general school-based and ECPA budgets for September 2017.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the Board Secretary and Treasurer reports for September 2017.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the placement of special education students.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the submission of the No Child Left Behind application to State of New Jersey Department of Ed for July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017 for the following grants: Title I, Part A, Title II, Part A, Title III, and Title III Immigrant. I would also like to recommend discussion and approval of funding to assist with busing and a tour of the State House from State House Express for Rossi Intermediate School in the amount of $350.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval to accept the following funding. Civil War Trust Field Trip Grant for Menny's Elementary School in the amount of $750.
Questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I think it's great how our schools are reaching out for these grants to help assist our students to go different places that a lot of us may not have gone. So I'd like to thank the schools who actually go out and do the research to get the grants. I see we usually approve 1 or 2 every meeting, so it's really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the Early Childhood Program 5-year preschool plan for the 2017-18 school year.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the submission to the Department of Ed, the Office of Early Childhood 2018-19 ECPA budget for a total of $18,967,114.
Questions or comments? Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
He left.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding employees funded by the federal program salaries and funding percentages for the 17-18 school year as per the names provided and on file with the board secretary.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. How come everyone else is 100% and there's only one at 90, and will we ever get the 90 at 100%?
The reason why it's Melanie is at 90% is some people are split funded, and so when somebody is 100% coded to a grant, all their time has to be spent on that grant. So 90% of Ms. Beck's time is on the grants, and 10% she'll be used as a substitute administrator in the schools.
Okay. Are we ever thinking about doing it 100%?
We could, but if we did, she wouldn't be able to substitute. So we figure since she's our employee, rather than bring in an outside sub, she
Yeah,
goes
that
in.
makes sense.
She fills in for principals 10% of her time.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval to accept the year-end guaranteed profit reconciliation payment of $41,845.26 from Sodexo for the year ending August 31st, 2017.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the healthcare staffing agreement between the Vineland Board of Ed and Epic Health Services Incorporated to provide licensed practical nurses at $45 per hour and registered nurses at $55 per hour on an as-needed basis for special education students in a form acceptable by the board solicitor and superintendent.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the change order from R. Maxwell Construction Company, Inc. for the VHS North Toilet Room renovations. Change order number 1 to reroute condensate line to mop sink and install partitions. The total increase is $1,375, which will be funded by the contingency allowance of $7,500, credit of unused contingency for $6,125 applied to contract.
Questions or comments?
Ms. Haley,
Yes.
can you explain that? Because that's a little confusing.
Okay, sure. Well, there's a change order, and the change order is for $1,375, but there's usually a contingency built into the total contract amount. So there was a contingency allowance of $7,500. So really, the change order doesn't make the contract go any higher. It eats into some of the contingency, but the contract is now complete, after this would now be complete, so we can close it out, and it came in under budget by $6,125.
And that goes back into our budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the change order from Union Roofing Contractors, Inc. for the Vineland High School South 2017 partial roof replacement. Change order number 9269703 to provide C-wing roof ladder. Total increase is $2,869, which will be funded by the contingency allowance.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the agreement between the Vineland Board of Education and the Camden County Technical School for the 17-18 school year for one full-time student at a cost of $8,743.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the tuition/transportation contract between the Vineland Board of Ed and the Robbinsville Board of Ed for transportation cost of $108.42 per day and tuition cost of $1,845 per month for one student who is attending the Rubino Academy.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the 2017-18 Joint Transportation Agreement between Vineland Public Schools and Deerfield Township Schools in the amount of $1,000.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the joint transportation agreement between the Atlantic County Special Services and the Vineland Board of Education, route Vine-DP, from September 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, for transporting two students for a cost of $16,560.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives, 2017-18 jointers, 2017-18 transportation quoted contracts, 2017-18 Transportation Addendum, 2017 Fall Bus Evacuations.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the bus advertisement renewal for Rental Country for 1 year from September 12, 2017 to September 11, 2018 for 20 ads in the amount of $3,380.
Questions or comments?
Just
Motion.
thank you, Rental Country.
And actually, Rental Country has 40 ads on the buses,
Great,
but
thank
they
you.
renew in 2 different groups.
Thank you,
great.
Mr. Galloway.
Thank you so much.
Motion?
So moved.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the sale of various items which are on file with the Board Secretary to be auctioned on GovDeals.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a second?
Yes.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes, and that's a fairly diverse and interesting list.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
And that is the end of my recommendation.
Now you can have some water.
Long list. Have another drink. Okay, review of bills incurred during September 2017. Questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes. Where are we at? Committee reports? Anyone? Go ahead, Kim.
Curriculum instruction met this past Monday, October 30th. Mr. Jennings, Mr. Fiocchi, Mr. Medio, Dr. Gruccio, and myself were present with Mr. Fry. We discussed high school credit recovery under option 2, and possible goal is to increase opportunities for our students to graduate with their cohorts. We discussed the research on GPA versus class rank. We discussed service learning. A goal is to develop the graduation requirement, and agricultural education, the utilization and implementation of the 5 acres across from the high school. And from what Mr. Fry, we were talking about, it sounds really, really interesting. So we will be meeting again on November 27th for our final meeting of the year.
As a loan versus reinstatement. If anybody has any additional questions, I think Ms. Haley answered most of them earlier. Discuss the timeline for the synthetic turf field. The bid was advertised on 10/19. Opening scheduled for November 30th, and we hope to award it at the December meeting, possibly January. Ms. Haley?
Hopefully, we're shooting for December. If all goes well, December, but if
January will be fine if not.
push comes to shove, January, but no later than that.
Okay. Also discuss the shortfall for 2019 based on available surplus and increased expenses. And I ask that all board members now meet with Ms. Haley prior to the process getting started, so we're not deep into it and everybody's bringing recommendations to the table. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fiocchi. Was there any other?
Just, policy and personnel.
Yeah, that's right.
We met on October 4th, and we discussed various personnel issues within the district and pending lawsuits, et cetera. And basically, the big one was the policy that we voted on tonight, which was the one-time use of facilities.
Okay.
So, but I think that was explained previously. That was about it.
Okay, thank you. No emergent items. opportunity for the public to address the board on any item. Please, step up to the microphone and name and city, please.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi, my name is Sean Kashani. I'm from Vineland, New Jersey. I still live here. And I just wanted to make a possible suggestion for an elective in high school. I was thinking that maybe students would be interested in learning about real estate from the different avenues, from becoming a realtor to investment to becoming a developer to flipping, all the different nuances that go with it. And also, had I learned the things that were available, the different tricks out of high school or out of college, I would have definitely dove right into it, how you can get a multi-unit property, live for free, and then even get income from it, and then sell it and use that to credit to get more, and also how to build credit, because a lot of people think the best way is just to pay off as soon as you can, but it's not. You're supposed to pay off a little bits at a time, and that builds your credit. And if it's difficult to maybe, because I don't know how practical it is to have it as an elective, because you have to pay a teacher and different things, to maybe have it as a club at first, see how that works. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Any old business? I don't think there's anything we need to discuss. Anything new from anyone? Board member remarks. Mr. Medio, I'll start with you.
The only thing I'd like to say is congratulations to Tess Fisher. She won the Cape Atlantic League tournament yesterday. Today she won her last match against Millville, and her accomplishments are beyond anything that's ever happened at Vineland schools before. I think her final record was 154-3, and her only 3 losses were in the semifinals and the finals of the state. That's the best girls tennis player in the state wins that, and she came in second one year, and she lost in the semis to the eventual champion the other 2 years, and this year she was the state champion. So she's reached the pinnacle of her sport. And good luck to the football team this Friday. It's our first big test of the season, and we'll see how we do with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tess Fisher. Ms. Rios?
I just want to congratulate the AMSA students for their creativity in the app challenge, and congratulate Mrs. Darlene Castellini on her VEA recognition. I also want to wish all the individuals that are running in this year's election good luck, and I hope that your heart is in the right place when you are elected to the position, and that you make effective decisions that will do good to the community, or whatever position it is that you're feeling that it will do benefit to the community. Remember that you're not there for yourself or for any promises or any political promises, that you're there for the people, and I hope that you represent the people well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rios. Mr. Sabrana?
Thanks, as always, to our flag saluters from Rossi tonight. And that presentation of the apps in the hallway really was spectacular. I think we have some future Silicon Valley millionaires out there.
Yes.
Hats off to Darlene Castellini, our VEA support person. Enjoyed working with her many years. Since we won't be meeting before the election, I would like to thank all those who are willing to give their time and their talents to serve the public interest. We're really lucky this year in the sense that we have 12 candidates running for the school board, which shows a great deal of interest. Unfortunately, there's so many people that we weren't able to have the Greater Vineland Chamber of Commerce Forum, which presents an opportunity for people running to be seen and heard by the community at large. The Daily Journal did a nice job with their candidate profiles, but it's always nice to see someone talk and hear how they feel. And when you're financing this campaign yourself with just a few dollars, you don't really have a way to get on television with all the ads that we see normally. So I'm hoping that somehow we can return to the format that we had for so many years so that people in the community can make an informed decision about who they're going to support. Finally, congratulations to Mr. Russo, I see in the audience tonight, and our undefeated Fighting Clan football team. If I'd known how great you were going to do, I would have retired sooner. And I wish you great success on Friday night. That's going to be the big game, and I have a feeling it's going to be a big crowd. And finally, to Mr. DeSanto, who was one of the veterans that was honored tonight and also was one of the volunteers of the year for the Main Street Violent program, helping to try to revitalize our downtown, which I'm sure is something that's a great interest of all of us. So hats off to you, Bobby. And happy Thanksgiving, because I guess we won't have a meeting until December.
True. Thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Sabrana. Mr. Fiocchi?
Not at this time.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes, I just want to say I'm very proud to be a part of this great district. I'm very proud of all of the teachers that were recognized tonight, all of our students, the athletes, the coaches, Mr. Russo, and all of us that make this district what it is today. I just want to encourage everyone to get out and just vote next Tuesday, no matter who you're voting for. Just go and cast your vote. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Ms. Acosta?
I'm just going to echo my fellow board members' thoughts with respect to all of the achievements, with respect to the accomplishments by our faculty. Particularly, I want to congratulate the AMSA students. You know, these are 8th grade students, and I was completely blown away by their creativity, by their thoughtfulness in terms of what they were doing. And I think each of their projects, each of their apps could truly be a very viable and helpful app for our city. So we just need to figure out ways to come up with money. And that is my my last remark. Again, I am deeply disturbed by the fact that the state did not approve our request to reimburse or to give back the $2 million that they reduced in state aid. Offering a city in Cumberland County, which is basically one of the poorest cities in New Jersey, alone, when they approved 23 other cities and school districts, some of which, you know, and I'm not taking anything away. I'm really happy that these school districts received the funding that they requested, but we are deserving of that money. Our children are deserving of that money, and I would urge each and every one of you, contact your local legislators and let them know we are a district in need, and unless our voices are heard, we all need to get involved in this, because we're going to be facing a pretty big deficit when we start crunching the numbers, and this money should not have to be paid back. It seems extremely unfair, and I just had to voice that, put it out there for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Catasbody?
I'd like to echo my fellow board members as far as thanking the Safety Patrol for coming out, the AMSA students. They blew me away also. I was just so impressed and in awe of those students and the apps that they produced and showed us. I'm hoping maybe we can find a donor, you know, somebody to help us out that way. I'd like to congratulate Ms. Castellini, also probably a job well deserved. Having several family members, including my husband, my dad, my uncles, they proudly served in various branches of the military. I'd like to thank Dr. Gruccio for recognizing our veterans in the district. All too often, they don't get the recognition and thanks that they so well deserve. So God bless all who have served and continue to serve our country. Thank you. Thank you to all the fall sports participants, the athletes, the coaches for putting your time out there. A special shout out to Tess Fisher. What a monumental accomplishment that she's done. Such a job well done. Our football team, what a great job you guys are doing, to your staff. And this week it's going to be a really big game, but I think big game is going to be the arch rival in Millville, so I wish you all the best. And you know I'm going with Vineland, so. And as far as I'd like to echo what Ms. Acosta said about the state not giving us the money. I can't understand it. I know when Ms. Haley was putting together numbers, they had to show the hardship in our area. And I think just Cumberland County alone has that hardship. So for them not to give us our money back, please write to your congressmen, your senators, write to anybody, have our city people write. We need to get our money back and get out to vote. Read the article as far as the school board candidates. Read the Daily Journal. I did a very good job. So read those. Get to know your candidates, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Have a safe next week. I know there's several days off from school, so enjoy your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cottaspati. Mr. Bordley.
Mr. Fiocchi, black or blue? Again, congratulations to Tess Fisher, all of our fall athletes. Job well done by everybody. Coach Russo, good luck on Friday. We'll black out Catone for you and hopefully walk away with our heads held high.
So that's what the black and blue meant?
Yes.
We're wearing black?
Black.
How about red? I'm wearing this.
No, it's black out Catone.
I gotta wear black?
Black out Catone.
All right.
Mr. Facebook, you know this.
Mr. Facebook. Dr. Gruccio, do you go or did me go?
Whatever you want.
Go ahead, you go
Okay.
first.
I want to just take a minute to thank the board members and the community who came out the other night for a strategic plan update. It was very nice to see so many people who came out. I'm very proud of the work our district is doing on the strategic plan. That's what we base our goals on each year, and we are making some real progress. And I believe that by the time we hit our 5th year, we will have accomplished everything within the plan. And so that's something to be really proud of. And I thank everyone who came out and everyone who's been involved in the process. I also want to mention that we received a donation from Gruden Group LLC of $2,000. The donation was given to our football program. At this point, we're not exactly sure what it will be used for. Maybe for the turf, I don't know. But it was very nice of them to give us the money anyhow, so we're happy about that. And I want to thank our veterans again. I mean, we have so many wonderful people in our district, and I wish more of them were here because we just want to say thank you for what they do for our country and for each of us. And I'm very proud that we have board members and members in who are teaching staff and all across the board who have given time to our country. And so I just want to thank them. And I hope that our teachers will remember to explain to our students the purpose that we have school open on Veterans Day is so that our schools can invite veterans in and try to teach our children what Veterans Day is all about, and so that they will have a better understanding of what that day is for. So I hope that they'll take advantage of that and include our veterans in some of their presentations. And finally, as I always say, I think tonight was a true picture of what our district's all about. We stood here tonight and we saw phenomenal projects by our AMSA students. We just heard how fantastic Tess Fisher has done. We have an undefeated football team. We honored Charlene Castellini. Bob was honored this past week. We just have so many good things going on within our district, and it's not all athletes and it's not all academics, it's well-rounded. And I think we have very, very much to be proud of. So I just want to let you know that it means a lot to me to be a part of this district. I also want to thank all of the candidates that are running for the board or for any election for that matter. It takes a lot to put yourself out there, especially as a board member. You get paid nothing, you give your time, and it's been a long time since we've seen 12 candidates. So I wish all of you the very, very best, and I wish everybody a very blessed, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Scott. Mary.
Hey, it wasn't
Anyway.
Halloween's over.
Marching band. There was a competition, and they were top 10, number 1 out of 10 bands, which is good. I mean, being number 1 out of 2 is good. What else can I say here? I'm doing the Scott English. Already? Petway is sponsoring a Disney on Ice trip. Call 364-8855, $49 per person, sometime in December, I believe, late December. Dina Rodolfo, thank you for the presentation. A lot of information we understand. We're going to be emailing you all of our questions, so don't block us. We're going to do that. Coach Russo, there's a little blip about this Gruden meet. Is there anything you can expand on? Do you want to expand on that? If not, could you tell us about that? I'm real excited about it. And there was a little blip about, Violin met Gruden. And, yeah, sure. While you're here, I might as well get you up there, right? And we're wearing black, right?
Yeah, maybe I could advertise that as well. Yeah, I got an email today from Mrs. Halen. I want to make sure that I was here because I knew Dr. Grucia was going to announce that. It was a great experience. We got chosen as one of the best teams in South Jersey. That's why we were picked.
Wow.
And Coach Gruden got the notes on our team. He knew all about our players. He saw what we've done in the last 5 years, and he wanted to award us, the first money we received is $2,000 from the Gruden Group, and it's going to be matched by PDQ. It's like almost like a Chick-fil-A place. It was really cool, and we got to sit there with some other teams and talk football. And it was really neat that he knew our names, and I actually got a $100 gift card as well.
Share it?
Sure. Where are we going tonight? That's why I'm here.
Is it for PDQ?
No. It doesn't. It's a Visa one. We can go anywhere we want.
Oh.
So also, Friday night, once a year we have a blackout. It's just a fun thing that we do now with the football program, and some other teams do it as well. But we want to black out Gatone in support of us. We have a big game, and things are going very well. And the fans have been great. The community's been great. The Board of Education's been great. Dr. Grucio and Central Administration has been nothing but supportive since day one, so I really appreciate that. When people ask, how do we do it, and the answer is everyone is all in. Everyone is all in. It doesn't work without the support that we have, so I really appreciate all you've done for us. And hopefully you can get out Friday night. And we love our red, but it's a blackout. It's going to be a special night. We're in our black uniforms. There is red and gray in it, but they are black. They're very nice, and all the fans and the kids are excited. They're all talking about it in school, so it should be a nice night. So hope I explained that well for you as far as how that went.
Might have to go to the Roo store and get a black one.
Actually, I don't know if Roo Store has it, but I know one person that does. Kerry Ducharme has it at Ducharme, so I'm going to throw him a little pitch there.
Okay.
But he's got all kinds of gear. They actually have the black hoodies in pink and red, so it's really neat. So they're black, and then they have, it says Violent Athletics. They're really cool. So he's done a really good job supporting us as well.
Thank you. Great. Good
So, hey, it's
information.
been great listening to everyone here. I'm, proud to be part of this, and thanks once again. Have a great night.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, Coach.
Just
Thank
to mention something that Coach Russo left out, we actually got a shout-out on Monday Night Football by Coach Gruden.
Yes.
He ended his segment with, "Watch out for Violin."
Yeah.
So.
And he also gave us all his information. If we're ever in Tampa, he has a facility in Tampa. And this is pretty funny. His association is called the FFCA. And if anybody knows his history, he was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach, and he won a Super Bowl, and then they fired him. So the FFCA stands for Fired Football Coaches Association. And that's his association. And that's him, Coach Gruden. He's something else. So it was a good experience. So. That's
great.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
when are we going to Tampa?
Soon.
I'm going to use that $100 and going to
Hey, it's a start. So, hey, thanks a lot. Hopefully we'll see you Friday.
Thanks, Coach.
Yes.
Go Vineland.
Go Vineland. Thank you. Is there anything else? Anyone? Bobby, you want to add something? Oh, do they? The character. Oh, God. Anyway, do I have a motion for
So
adjournment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.